Welcome to the Thrifty Moms DIY. Today we're going to go over how to make a wood pallet clock. It's really fun. I had a lot of fun doing this and very simple. Just takes a few things. I've got some tips, some ways to do it and some ways how not to do it. So check it out.
Here's what you'll need. Wood pallet pieces, flat trim piece, white paint, brush, miter saw, and a nail gun. We get this project started by using a wood pallet that we already have. We ended up cutting down the pieces as big as we could, so then when I needed to measure everything, I didn't have to worry about, oh, this is 10 inches, this is 11 inches, this is 15 inches. So everything was roughly about 14 to 15 inches. Ended up going with 14 inches for the 3 pieces that I used, and ended up cutting some extra just in case. Once everything was cut down, I went ahead and did a quick measure of everything to see which ones I needed to use and didn't. I then went ahead and used my miter saw to cut every piece down to the same 14 inches. I really only ended up using about 3 pieces for this wood pallet clock, but if you wanted to make them bigger or smaller, you could use more pieces or less pieces. Depends upon what you want. Once you're done cutting down your pieces, you want to go ahead and sand the ones that you want to use. Wood pallet wood is actually extremely soft, and it really does take to being sanded very well. Sanded, painted, everything, it loves it, but you just have to remember it's a softer wood. The next step that I take is to cut down the pieces that are going to keep the wood pallet larger clock pieces together. This is going to go on the back side. I usually don't use anything bigger than a 1x1. I think this is a 3/8 of an inch type trim piece, but I go ahead and cut it down, and I use about 3 pieces throughout the whole thing. The next step is to paint your wood pallets. I use a white, and I use it very lightly because I love to see the grain that comes through. After the paint has fully dried, you'll want to go ahead and put your wood pallet pieces together. Make sure that the part that you want to face out is actually on the bottom side. I made the mistake and didn't do that. And then secure your pieces. I did use 3/8 of an inch pieces in this clock, and I had to double them up because I didn't have a finishing nail that was long enough. So I made it work. Everything's great, but that's just what I had to deal with. Next, you want to drill a hole into the middle of your clock, and then you want to make sure that everything fits correctly so the hands work properly. I also make measurements to put the 1, 3, 6, and 9, and then I go through and do the other numbers in between. I don't make mine 100%. I know the clock needs to be extremely mathematical, but I make mine as close as I possibly can. Next comes the fun part, spraying on the numbers. You can paint these on, you can use an application, there's a sticker that puts them directly on. You can do whatever you want. I ended up spray painting them, and I loved the look. Here's some video on how I added the numbers. Don't forget, if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to see more from the Thrifty Moms DIY. As you can see, I use different approaches on how to spray paint the numbers. Sometimes I covered the areas completely, sometimes I just spray painted directly. It really just depended upon how comfortable I was with the spray painting. In hindsight, I probably would have taped everything off, been a little bit more exacting with it, but it ended up coming out wonderfully. I just had to do a little bit of touch-up paint in the end. As I mentioned, I did have to do some touch-up paint. I just used the white paint that I already had and just kind of lightly applied it throughout. And I did end up sanding it a little bit to make it look as rough as it did before, so it wasn't a splot of white paint on a lightly painted wood pallet. Here's a picture of the inner workings of the clock. It was a little difficult to get it going. I had some problem actually getting the clock mechanism to continuously move and continuously work. I think I just pushed on some of the elements a little bit too hard, but in the end, I ended up getting it to work beautifully. Here's a picture of the finished project. Loved it, would love to do it again. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Like and subscribe to see more from the Thrifty Moms DIY.